Hey guys, welcome back to the Opportunity Architect. In this episode of Tracking Your Life the Smart Way with Gemini AI, we'll be taking a look at user authentication and this daily newsletter feature that I teasered, basically nudging us to take action. So the goal should be to maximize having awesome days. And how do you get there?
So in this episode, we'll implement the sidebar here. Basically a user profile, also how many logs we have tracked already, our current day streak. So here you can see the longest streak is 1 day, and currently I have a 0-day streak because I didn't log anything yet. And then we'll also add this GitHub-style calendar that shows you how many inputs you've tracked on each day by hovering over it. And then of course you can also log out. And then after we have the sidebar with the user authentication, we can take a look at the newsletter tab. And we'll be using the newsletter tab to send us nudge emails, kind of like reminding us where we are and what's the next best action. Okay, so before we can implement this, we actually have to set up 2 new environment variables. One is our Google client ID, the client secret, and also the Gmail app password. The former is needed to set up the OAuth screen, and the latter is necessary to send emails with your Gmail account. That's why we'll need this app password. Okay, so let's start off with the Google client ID first. So we'll go to this link here. We'll go to the OAuth screen. First of all, we have to define an OAuth client. So we just click here on Create Client. Then we have to select the application type. So in this case, we'll take Web Application. We'll call it Live Tracker. So next up, we have to add the JavaScript origins. In our case, it's just localhost. And then also the authorized redirect URIs, which is again localhost/OAuth2 callback. Okay, so after adding this, we save it. And then here we get our client ID, which we copy and paste in our environment file. And the same for the Google client secret, which we copy here again, go back, and paste here. Okay, now with the OAuth credentials defined, let's also create the app password. So let's go to this link here, and let's create the app password. Okay, so first we have to log in. Then we land here, and then we have to give our app a name. So let's call it Live Tracker. And then now here we have our app password, which we copy again, go back, and paste here.
So after we've added the app password here, we also have to add it to the secrets tunnel in the Streamlit directory. So here again, our OAuth fallback is defined. We need to define a cookie secret and also our client ID and client secret. So you take this example and rename it to secrets.toml like this here. And here I added the client ID and the client secret. For the cookie secret, you should choose something unique, but you can also just do it your cookie secret, which is already quite unique. Anyway, now we can start our app. So let's do docker compose app. Okay, so then we go to localhost. Here we have our sign in with Google button. We sign in with our Google account, and here we are. So what's new? We have added this user profile, some stats here, how many logs we tracked today, how many logs we have tracked in total, how many tasks are still open, how many we've completed, our current daily logging streak and the longest streak, and then also this GitHub-style calendar. So when we hover over a field here, we can see that we have 7 contributions on June 6, which represents the only day that we've tracked inputs. That's why the current streak is 0. And as a quick recap, we've added this background info here. So my name, my age, gender, location, the communication style, my values, and also my challenges. And if you remember, we also added these tasks here. Go swimming, that we completed. And also the task from the 6th, where we mentioned we wanted to go to the Essex store and buy new running shoes on the 7th. So this is actually what I already did, so let's complete this. Let's go back to the chat tab, and let's record an input log. So yesterday I bought new Essex running shoes. Specifically, I bought the Essex Nimbus 27. So we can see a new log has been added, and then also the live tracker completed our task, which we can see in the Tasks tab, and it's also reflected here in the Open Task stats. Okay, finally, as a recap, let's take a look at the input logs again. So we had these 7 logs here from the 7th, and then also this new log here from today. So as a next step, let's record some more inputs. My goal is to work out every day for at least 30 minutes. Okay, so this input has been recorded, we've added a new log, and also the background information has been updated, which we can see here. Okay, let's add some more data. So let's go back to the chat and say, today morning I ran on the treadmill for 47 minutes. Okay, so a new log has been added. Let's record some more. Currently, I'm sitting in my car and I'm recording episode 5 for my YouTube series. Okay, so we can see this here has been added as a log too. Now that the AI knows more information about me, let's try out the newsletter feature. So when we click here on Send Newsletter, then it'll send a newsletter to us on what we should do next. Okay, we can see the newsletter has been sent. So let's check this out. Okay, so here's our state analysis and next steps. Typically, it looks first at where we are and what we should do next. So here it mentions I did the workout today, but I still need to work on my challenge of proactive planning. So it tells me to map out the next 3 to 5 workouts to be more proactive about my planning and less reactive. And then also ends the newsletter with a motivational quote. So let's actually try out the follow-up newsletter. So we go back to the chat, and then we say, I just planned the 3 to 5 workouts for my coming week. Okay, so we see this has been added as a log input. And now if we go back to the newsletter tab and set another newsletter, we should see it reference what I did. Yeah, and here you can see it gave us some feedback. So it tells us that the mapping of the next steps was a good idea, but it's just the first single action and it's not a complete transformation yet. So what it recommends us to do is actually leverage that momentum and define milestones. Okay, so I hope you guys got how this works and how you can leverage the newsletter as kind of a nudge engine. Of course, you can also get this kind of advice from the chat directly, but sometimes it's helpful for the AI to take a certain persona. Okay, finally, let's take also a quick look at what's new in the code. So we have this newsletter tab where we can trigger the newsletter nudge engine and also the user authentication via Google OAuth. So how does this look like in the front end? So we have this new calendar here that shows us the activity of the last 30 days. And here's just some HTML for styling the calendar. Here's the logic for calculating the color inside the calendar. And below here, we track how many tasks we have open, how many we have completed, and then also how many logs we have today, what's our current streak, and what's the longest streak, which we can see here. So here's the longest streak, here's the current streak, and then we add all this in here and return it to the sidebar. And for the newsletter, we added a new tab here on the very bottom, where we can trigger the newsletter send by the button click, and then send it to our own email address with all our background information, input logs, and tasks. And this trigger newsletter send function is referencing the newsletter.py here. So what's new here is to keep track of a newsletter log file that contains all the newsletters that we've sent and their content. So here you can see where we sent the newsletter to, the timestamp when it was sent, and also here the content. Same for the second newsletter that was sent 4 minutes afterwards. And for the newsletter prompt, we use this here. So we just tell it to be brutally honest, direct, and action-focused, and to give us a current state analysis and actionable next steps. And this needs to be structured as a hard-truth, followed by a strategic play and a motivational quote at the end. Also, we ask it to avoid repetition by including the previously sent advice, which we can see down here in the context. Then here we have some more HTML styling, and finally down here we sent the newsletter via SMTP. And that's already it. Okay, let's go back to our application. Okay, I hope you guys liked this episode. In the next episode, we'll deploy this app publicly so that we can not only access it on our MacBook via localhost, but directly on our mobile phone via an application, and then actually take the live tracker with us always on the go. Okay, I hope you guys are excited for this. Let me know in the comments if there's anything you'd like to know or anything that you think is missing and I should add. And as always, you can get the code in the description, and then you can run this yourself. And I hope I see you again in the next episode. So long, bye-bye.